All right, so we're back. I made a couple of weird. Um, I guess they weren't really mistakes. They were just kind of. I overlooked some stuff in the mask versus mask match yesterday when I did that tutorial. Um, so I want to correct that, and then that's pretty much the end of this tutorial and of the mask versus mask match. I'm not really going to add much else to it after we go through it today. Um, but what I'm going to show you today, you really are going to want to implement in your own code as the thing that I overlooked is that at the end of a match, um, if um, they if the wrestler was still in the submission hold, um, the costume would continuously change and the referee would continuously call the match. So it created a weird infinite loop, and we don't want that. So what I ended up doing is right before you check the damage on the mask, sorry, I inserted a new if statement. It's real short. It's just if match main.inst.isMatchEnd, and if that's true, you just return out of the code. Match main, if you remember from the earlier tutorials, is essentially the match script. It just kind of tells the game what order to process match updates in and that sort of thing. And it stores all of the variables about a match, so the match in specific. So the time, the um, whether it's over or not, the state that it's in, like is it in entrance state, is it in match state, um, is it in fade out state, is it in fade in state, that sort of thing. Um, so is match end is what you're going to want to check anytime you need to see if a match is over. So basically, like I said, the new code, and I'll type it out and then delete the one that I had typed out previously, is if match main.inst.isMatchEnd. And then if that's true, just return. And that's all you need to do there to make sure that it doesn't loop infinitely. Because once the referee calls the match once, if it comes back, if the opponent is still in the submission hold, it will just quit out. Um, and so that's not a big deal. So there's that. And the other thing that I did was I went in after I set this to 500. I thought the chin lock did more damage than it did. I thought it did about 3 or 5 per submission wrench. It does 1. So 500 was ridiculously high. Um, so I changed it down to 100, which is about the same as it would have been at 500 if each submission pull did 5 damage like I had originally thought. So I changed this, the mass damage, defpl.id or defpl underscore idx to be greater than or equal to 100 instead of 500. That way the match doesn't go literally forever. It still takes about 12 to 13 pinning attempts to get a mask off. So the match is still going to go for a while, especially once it gets into high damage, and really the pinning attempts only happen on priority type moves. So it didn't take away from any of the matches that I tested the new 100 with. It just meant that they didn't go for 40 minutes because the time or the limit was set too high for the move. The other thing you could do if you really wanted to leave it at 500 was edit the damage that the chin lock does, but I don't recommend that because it will affect the regular chin lock as well, not just the pinning mask gripping chin lock that we assigned and that we check for. So yeah, I don't recommend doing that. I recommend changing the the mask damage limit that we had set to be lower. You don't have to use 100. You could use 150 if you want it to go a little longer. You could use 75 if you don't want it to go quite as long. The key is to just test and adjust accordingly. So that's pretty much what we've got going on here. I mean, you could even use a random setting if you wanted to set it up here. So let's say you wanted to go public static int mask damage limit equals Unity engine. You always have to specify Unity engine because system also has a random here. Random.range. And then let's say anywhere from 75 to 150. So you could do that and then come down here, and if mass damage is greater than or equal to mass damage limit, you can do it. That way it changes for each match. You never know exactly how many wrenches it's going to take, because right now each wrench does 1. So if you counted the wrenches, if you sat there and counted it, it's going to end at 100 wrenches of that pinning the pin replacement chin lock every time without fail. So if you wanted to randomize it a bit, you could do it the way I just showed you. I'm not going to do that. I don't mind it ending at 100 every time. It doesn't bother me. But if you wanted to add some kind of randomness where you didn't know exactly how many wrenches it was going to take, you could do that. Other than that, that's pretty much it. I tested a bunch of these last night, and that's when I noticed the 2 mistakes that I had made. And the end match one happens because heels don't always... Non-heels release a submission hold at the end of a match, so I didn't notice. But heels don't, so I ran one with a heel last night, and he kept going. And my test edit kept changing from masked to unmasked, and the referee kept throwing up the end match sign, and the music would reset, and it was a giant weird loop, and it never ended. Because basically once the match is in match end state, the opponent is basically done. Like, they won't try to kick out, they won't try to end a submission or anything. So on the first loop, it ends the match, and this is set to true, the is match end, so the opponent never does anything. But because other stuff is going on, it resets the fade out timer every time, and it just keeps going. So you absolutely have to add this if you're planning on running like AI versus AI, mask versus mask matches. And like I said, that's pretty much all I wanted to show you. And it's just proof that even if you test something once or twice and it seems to be working, you still might run into errors later on down the road when you test with a new factor like the heel thing. You've just got to be aware that, just because something looks good, the first couple of times doesn't necessarily mean it's bug-free. You might have to come back in and adjust things to make it work like you intended. So, anywho, that's it for this one. Thank you for watching, and I will be back with another tutorial probably sometime on Sunday. I'm honestly thinking about doing something that people have been asking for with all of the new moves that we're releasing, which is increasing the move set, but I'm going to do it in a way that that doesn't require a really tedious UI, and is based on randomizing moves. So you can set, let's say for the for square up, you can set as many moves as you want, and it'll just pick a random one off the list of moves that that edit has set for square and up, and it will do that move instead of whatever move is set for it anyway. So yeah, that way you can have more moves and without actually having to have more move slots. The only caveat, and you can work on changing this, and it is possible, is that the square up will always use the same AI logic, so it's always going to be done the same percentage of time. So you don't want to put moves, you want to put similar moves there. You want to put, like if you've got a body slam there originally and you want to mix it up so that, the edit can either do a body slam, an arm drag, or a drop toe hold. You don't want to stick some, like a body slam, and arm drag, and a pile driver in there, because you don't want the edit using the pile driver as often as you might want them using an arm drag or a body slam. So, that's going to be the caveat for the initial version. We may look at setting up, being able to change AI in a later tutorial, but for the initial tutorial, what we're going to do is a random selection of moves from a list that the user can define, but it's going to all be based on the initial AI. All right, so that's enough for talking and babbling about what we're going to do next. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. I'll be back sometime this weekend with the basic tutorial for how to do what I just described.